Segment 1. Why it sucked to be a peasant in the Viking. North introduction. Imagine yourself in a place where the sun barely touches the horizon. The days are short and cold, and the winds bite through every crack and crevice. The year is 900 CE, and you stand amidst the dense, frozen forests of Scandinavia, the land of the Vikings. The air is thick with the smell of snow and wood smoke, the scent of the earth now hidden beneath a blanket of frost. The wind howls like a beast, carrying with it the chill of the far north. And the ground beneath your feet is hard frozen solid, a reminder that survival here is an endless struggle against nature. As you stand there, imagine the hard, relentless rhythms of daily life. Here, in the shadow of towering mountains and endless seas of ice, life for the peasants was a constant battle. A battle not just against the harsh elements, but against the unforgiving demands of the land itself. Theirs was not a life of grand exploits or heroic battles, but one of endurance and necessity. In this segment, we will explore the harsh realities of being a peasant in the Viking North, where survival itself was a victory. The harsh life of the peasant. The first thing that strikes you about life as a Viking peasant is how long the winters are. The cold seems unending, wrapping the land in an icy grip from October to March, with snowstorms that can last for days. The daylight hours are short, and when the sun sets, it does so with a finality that gives the impression that the world itself is closing in. It's hard to imagine, but on many days, the only source of warmth is the fire crackling in the hearth. A fire that, despite your best efforts, always feels like it's just a little too far away. Your home is a small, dark structure made of timber and sod. Its walls thick with smoke from the constant burning of wood. Inside, the light from a few flickering candles and the fire casts long shadows that stretch across the rough-hewn floors. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, dampness, and the earthy scent of the animals that share your small living space. The room is cramped with only a few meager belongings, a simple bed made of straw and furs, a few wooden tools, and perhaps a small chest to hold what little wealth you've managed to acquire. The daily work of a peasant in the Viking North is exhausting and repetitive. The long summer months are spent in the fields, sowing grain, tending to livestock, and preparing for the coming winter. Yet, even then, the threat of failure is ever present. The soil is poor, the growing season is short, and the frost can come early, leaving your crops stunted or destroyed. In winter, the work does not cease, though the tasks change. Now, you must hunt, fish, or forage for what little food you can find. Perhaps there are a few sheep or goats to care for, and you must make sure that they are kept alive in the harsh conditions. The winter diet is sparse, often consisting of salted meat, dried fish, root vegetables, and any leftover grain from the previous harvest. Fresh food is a rare treat, and even that has a tendency to spoil quickly in the cold. The physical toll of this life is immense. Your hands are rough, worn from the constant work, and your body is covered in layers of clothing made from animal skins and furs. But still, the cold seeps in, biting at your bones. The constant struggle to stay warm, to gather enough food, and to keep the animals alive becomes all-consuming. The nights are the hardest long dark hours spent huddled close to the fire, with nothing to do but think of the endless stretch of winter days ahead. Yet, this is not just a struggle against nature. It is a struggle against the Viking social system. As a peasant, you have little control over your own life. The land you work belongs to a local lord or chieftain, and what little wealth you manage to create is shared with them, whether in the form of tribute or labor. The notion of private property is foreign to you, and your life is tightly bound to the rhythms of your community. The chieftain or lord to whom you owe allegiance will be the one who dictates what work you will do, how much of your produce you will give to him, and even who you will marry. For most peasants, there is little hope of improving their status in life. The social hierarchy is rigid, and any wealth you accumulate will likely be passed down to your children, who will continue to toil under the same unyielding conditions. The idea of upward mobility is almost non-existent, even if you are fortunate enough to survive the winter and live to see the next harvest. The next challenge is only ever around the corner. In the spring, there is the promise of renewal, a brief window when the land thaws. The grass grows, and the animals are born. But soon after, the cycle repeats. The sweat of summer, the grind of the harvest, and the dread of the coming cold settle in once more. In the long run, life as a peasant in the Viking North is one of relentless survival. The land does not offer mercy, and the cold does not care for your perseverance. Segment 2, The Life and Saga of Ragnar Lothbrok. Introduction. Now, as the cold winds of the Viking North continue to howl through the barren landscape, imagine yourself in a place where legends are born, where the stark, unforgiving world of the peasants and the quiet struggle for survival is juxtaposed against the grand. Tales of warriors, kings, and heroes. You've heard whispers of a name, a man who walked the earth and left behind a legacy, not just of bloodshed, but of mythic proportions. Ragnar Lothbrok. Ragnar's life is a story that has been told and retold for generations, woven into the very fabric of Viking culture. His saga, filled with battles, conquests, and betrayals, mirrors the rough existence of his people, but also reveals a striking contrast: the ambition to conquer, to rise above the common struggles, to challenge the cold and the limitations of mere survival. In this segment, we step away from the unyielding grind of peasant life and enter the world of Ragnar Lothbrok, the legendary Viking warrior and king. His tale is a reflection of the fierce spirit of the Viking age, one that both celebrated the mundane struggles of daily life and elevated them into the grandiosa. Life driven by the desire for glory, honor, and the need to carve one's name into history. Ragnar's rise to legend born into the harsh world of the Viking North. Ragnar Lothbrok's tale begins in a way that is familiar to many, yet extraordinary in its detail. According to the sagas, Ragnar was not born a king, nor was he born into luxury. His early years were shaped by the same frigid winds and unforgiving winters that would have defined the life of any other Viking man. He was a son of the mighty warrior Sigurd, a descendant of the gods. Yet, even Ragnar's beginnings were unremarkable by royal standards. In the cold, dark villages of Scandinavia, life was about survival. Yet, even from a young age, Ragnar had a sense of something greater, an ambition that burned in him like the cold northern winds themselves. His mind, sharp as the steel of a sword, sought not just to endure the harsh life around him, but to conquer it, to leave a mark that would be remembered long after he was gone. Ragnar's early years were spent as a raider, sailing across the frigid waters of the North Sea, raiding and pillaging coastal settlements in England, Ireland, and beyond. As a young warrior, he quickly gained a reputation for his fearlessness in battle, his quick thinking, and his ability to lead men. It is said that his first major raid came in the form of an assault on the kingdom of Northumbria in England, where he proved himself capable of both brute force and clever strategy. But Ragnar's most famous conquest was the siege of Paris. This was not just a battle, it was a defining moment in the Viking saga. Ragnar, armed with his knowledge of siege tactics, approached the great city of Paris with his army, sailing up the river Seine. The siege was long, and the city's defenses were formidable, but Ragnar's persistence paid off. It is said that Ragnar and his men used their cunning, their strength, and their ability to withstand the hardships of Viking winter to wear down the French forces. The fall of Paris became one of the most iconic moments in Ragnar's saga. Yet, as with most sagas, the truth of the events is clouded by myth and exaggeration. The victory, while undoubtedly a significant achievement for Ragnar, became a legend that transcended the mundane details of war. His name, now synonymous with boldness and bravery, would be sung about in the halls, written about in sagas, and passed down through generations. The legacy of Ragnar Lothbrok, despite his many victories and his growing fame, Ragnar's life was far from simple. His saga was also filled with personal struggles, betrayals, and tragedies echoing the very hardships faced by the peasants who endured the cold and harsh winters of Viking life. Ragnar's personal life was complicated. He married several women, each one of them notable in their own right. Lagertha, the shield maiden, was said to have fought by his side in battle. As legend has it, Ragnar met Lagertha during a raid, and she proved herself as capable a warrior as any man. She fought alongside Ragnar, protecting him and earning her place in Viking history. Their union was one of mutual respect and shared courage, but it was not to last forever. Ragnar's later marriages were similarly fraught with drama and intrigue. His marriage to Aslog, a woman of divine lineage, brought him sons who would later become famous in their own right. Bjorn, Ironside, Ivar, the Boneless, and Sigurd, Snake in Lie, among others. These sons would go on to carve their own legacies, some of which would rival that of their father. However, Ragnar's life also saw betrayal and loss. His final years were marked by a sense of foreboding as he faced his eventual capture by King Ila of Northumbria. Despite his earlier successes, Ragnar's final fate was not one of a glorious warrior's death on the battlefield, but of a cruel and brutal execution. This moment, grim and tragic, added an additional layer of myth to Ragnar's legacy, one that was filled with both the triumphs and the tragedies of Viking life. Though his life came to a brutal and untimely end, Ragnar Lothbrak's legacy lived on. His saga, written down and passed through generations, would inspire Viking warriors and leaders for centuries. The myths and legends surrounding his name were not just tales of adventure. They were reflections of the same harsh realities of life in the Viking world. The cold, the brutal winters, the constant struggle for survival, and the pursuit of glory. All of these elements became woven into the fabric of Ragnar's myth. Segment 3, The Mystery of the Vinland Settlement Introduction. As we leave behind the sagas of Ragnar Lothbrok and his mythic conquests, we now venture into a different chapter of the Viking tale, mystery wrapped in the snow, shrouded in the fog of time. Imagine yourself once again at the edge of the world, where the land meets the frozen sea. It's a place that seems almost forgotten. A place where the stories of Viking expansion take on a new and sometimes elusive character. You've heard of Vinland, the faraway land across the Western Sea, a land that some believe to be a realm of abundance, a place where the Vikings could settle and escape the hardships of their home. But as you stand on the icy shore, gazing across the vast ocean, you may wonder, what was Vinland really like? Was it a mythical place conjured by the imagination of poets and sagas, or did it truly exist? The mystery of Vinland has captivated historians, archaeologists, and storytellers for centuries. Was it the rich, fertile land described in the sagas, or was it a harsh and unforgiving wilderness? In this segment, we will explore the history and mystery of the Vinland settlement. The first known attempt by Europeans to settle in North America before Columbus. What happened there? And why did it fade from memory, lost to time and the sea? The sagas and the search for Vinland. The tale of Vinland begins with Leif Erikson, the son of Eric the Red, who, according to the sagas, sailed westward from Greenland around the year 1000 CE. Leif's journey is one of the most famous voyages in Viking lore, and the accounts of it were passed down through generations. The sagas tell us that Leif and his crew set sail from Greenland in search of new lands, and they came upon a coast filled with forests, wild grapes, and rich soil. Land idyllic land they called Vinland, meaning wineland. As Leif and his men explored this new world, they encountered the indigenous peoples of the area, the ancestors of modern-day Native American tribes. The encounters, as described in the sagas, some filled with conflict. Yet, the Vikings remained in Vinland for only a brief time. The settlement, known as the Vinland Settlement, was established for a short while before it was abandoned. Its exact location and fate shrouded in mystery. The idea of a Viking settlement in North America seemed almost fantastical for centuries. The notion that the Vikings were capable of crossing the Atlantic Ocean and establishing a foothold in the New World long before Columbus was a concept dismissed by many. The saga accounts, while fascinating, were often seen as exaggerated or unreliable. But then, in the 1960s, the mystery of Vinland began to unravel. A remarkable discovery was made in Newfoundland, Canada, at a site known as Longhouses Meadows. This site, a complex of ancient Viking structures, contained the remains of buildings similar to those described in the sagas. Archaeologists uncovered tools, iron nails, and other artifacts that confirmed the presence of Norse settlers in North America more than 500 years before Columbus. This discovery was groundbreaking. It proved that the Vikings had indeed reached North America. But what of Vinland itself? Was Longhouses Meadows the true Vinland? Or was it merely a waypoint on a much longer journey? What happened to the settlers who once called this place home? Theories and speculation. What happened to Vinland? The mystery of the Vinland settlement is still far from solved. Scholars have long debated the location of Vinland and the true extent of Viking exploration in North America. Some believe that the settlement at Longhouses Meadows was only a small part of a much larger Viking presence along the North American coast. Others speculate that Vinland may have been located further south in areas such as the northeastern United States or even the Great Lakes region. The sagas describe Vinland as a land of abundance, with lush forests and wild grapes. A description that many scholars have found puzzling. The climate and geography of Newfoundland and Labrador, while beautiful, do not quite match the fertile descriptions found in the sagas. Some believe that the land the Vikings referred to as Vinland may have extended further south, to areas where the climate was warmer and the land more hospitable for settlement. Another theory suggests that the Vikings may have ventured as far as modern-day New England, where they could have encountered fertile land and abundant resources. There are also suggestions that the Vikings might have traveled down the eastern seaboard of North America, seeking new lands for settlement. However, there are no direct archaeological evidence or Viking artifacts found in these areas, leaving the mystery unresolved. What we do know is that the settlement at Longso Meadows was short-lived. The Vikings, who had once been so capable of surviving in the harshest of environments, found themselves ill-equipped to deal with the challenges of life in the New World. The native populations, with whom the Vikings had some conflict, may have played a role in the settlement's eventual abandonment, though the exact reasons remain unclear. The tales of Vinland, written in the sagas, paint a picture of a place where the promise of a new beginning was marred by the realities of survival in a foreign land. The Vikings, like the peasants of the north, were forced to confront the elements, the unfamiliar terrain, and the challenges of establishing a community in an unknown world. Vinland's legacy. Though the Vinland settlement was abandoned, the story of Viking exploration in North America is far from forgotten. The discovery at El Onso Meadows remains one of the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century. It serves as a reminder that history is often written in fragments, and that the past is filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. In the end, Vinland represents more than just a place. It is a symbol of the Viking spirit, the desire to push beyond the known world, to explore, to conquer, and to settle new lands. It speaks to the ambition and resilience of the Viking people, who, in their quest for survival and glory, shaped the course of history. But the true nature of Vinland remains elusive, caught between the pages of the sagas and the sands of time. As the icy winds of the north continue to blow, so too does the mystery of Vinland, reminding us that some stories, no matter how hard we try, may never be fully known. Segment 4. The Chieftain's Hearth, Fireside Law, Feasting, and Lore Introduction as the darkness of the northern night falls and the winds outside howl with relentless force. Imagine yourself stepping into a warm, flickering room, the hearth crackling with the soothing sound of fire. You're no longer on the frozen edges of the Viking world, nor are you trudging through the barren, wind-blown landscapes. You have now entered a grand hall much larger than any peasant dwelling. where the shadows dance along the walls, and the air is rich with the smell of roasting meat, spiced with herbs and the deep scent of the wood fire. The faint echo of clinking mugs and the low murmur of voices fills the space. This is the Chieftain's Hall, the heart of Viking society. In this final segment, we step into the domain of the Viking elite, the chieftains, warriors, and noble families. Here, the hearth is not only a source of warmth, but also a center of law, governance, and social order. It is a place where the boundaries of class are defined, and where the tales of gods and heroes are shared over the clink of mead mugs. This hall, with its warmth and its reverence for both law and legend, is a far cry from the struggle of the peasant's cold. Hard life, but it is equally a part of the Viking story. Imagine yourself settled in the glow of the fire, part of the feast, surrounded by the echoes of ancient tales and the weight of Viking law. As we explore the rituals, the feasts, and the social dynamics that governed the chieftain's hearth. Feasting and law in the Chieftain's Hall, the Viking Chieftain's Hall. With its towering beams and richly adorned walls, is a place where both the mundane and the divine meet. The crackle of the fire and the laughter of the warriors fill the space. But there is always a sense of order, a rhythm that runs through everything. The Chieftain's Hall is not just a place of entertainment. It is a space of law, of decision-making, and of governance. Here, disputes are settled, alliances are forged, and the future of the clan is shaped. The centerpiece of these gatherings is the feast, a lavish occasion where the chieftain and his warriors, his trusted retainers, gather to celebrate victories. Mark, significant, or simply to honor the gods. The food is plentiful, a reflection of the wealth and prosperity of the clan. Roasted meats, barley porridge, smoked fish, and wild berries fill the long wooden tables. The smell of freshly baked bread mingles with the earthy aroma of the roasted meats. Mugs of mead and ale are passed around, their amber liquid sparkling in the firelight. The clinking of mugs and the sound of deep voices speaking in low tones form the background to these gatherings. There is a sense of camaraderie here, a bond forged in the heat of battle and the warmth of the hearth. But the feast is not only about food, it is a symbol of the social order. The chieftain sits at the head of the hall, surrounded by his warriors, who are treated with the respect due to those who have fought and bled for the clan. The other members of society, those lower in status, are present, but their position in the hall is different. They stand at the back or sit along the edges, serving the warriors and chieftain. Though they may share in the food and the drink, their role is subordinate. It is a delicate balance of honor and hierarchy, one that underscores the strict social codes that govern Viking life. The feasting, though loud and boisterous, also serves a higher purpose. It is here, in the heart of the hall, that Viking law is often established and disputes are settled. The chieftain, as the leader of the clan, holds the authority to make decisions both legal and moral that will affect the lives of those under his protection. The ancient practice of the thing, the Viking assembly, often took place here. It was in this sacred space that Viking law was enacted, where judgments were made and oaths were sworn. At the thing, any Viking could present their case before the chieftain or the assembly, and justice would be dispensed according to the laws of the land. It was a form of direct democracy, though one deeply rooted in the principles of honor and retribution. Blood feuds, property disputes, and even matters of personal honor were decided here. The thing could last for days, the air thick with heated arguments, with the exchange of promises and threats, and with the weight of history upon each word spoken. In the chieftain's hall, there is also the matter of the Viking blada, religious ritual where sacrifices are made to the gods. The hearth itself becomes a place of divine connection. The sacrifices of animals, or, in some cases, the exchange of treasures are meant to ensure the favor of the gods, to secure good harvests, prosperous raids, and protection for the clan. These rituals are performed with reverence as the chieftain leads his people in a ceremonial recognition of the forces beyond their control. Forces that can be both benevolent and capricious, lore and legacy. The importance of storytelling, but the chieftain's hall is not only about law, feasts, and rituals. It is also a space where the past is brought to life, where the stories of the gods and the heroes of old are recited by the skalds, the poets and bards of the Viking world. These storytellers, with their eloquent words and rhythmic cadence, shape the identity of the Viking people. They speak not just of the gods, but of the deeds of men of warriors who have carved their names into history, of the great battles fought under the banner of honor and bloodshed. The sagas, the rich oral history of the Vikings, are passed down through these gatherings, retold by the firelight in the warmth of the hall. They recount the triumphs of mighty warriors, the tragic fates of kings, and the ever-present tension between fate and free will. Through these tales, the warriors in the hall are reminded of their place in the grand tapestry of history. Their lives, while fleeting, are woven into the larger story of the gods and men. To be a Viking, to be a warrior, was to be part of a much larger mythic tradition. The stories of the god, Sodden, Thor, and Freyr, especially prominent during these gatherings. The Great Hall becomes a space not only for the honoring of the dead and the living, but also for the connection to the divine, the sacrifices made, the laws enacted. and the songs sung all tie the community back to the great forces that shaped their world. The skalds sing of Thor's hammer, of Odin's wisdom, and of the brave souls who sought glory in the halls of Valhalla, where the greatest of warriors are forever feasting in the presence of the gods. For the Vikings, their society and its future were inextricably linked to these traditions, and the hall itself was a symbol of both the power of the chieftain and the enduring strength of the culture. It was here, amidst the warmth of the fire and the sound of the songs, that Viking identity was forged. The warriors, the chieftain, and the entire clan, each one bound by honor, law, and the stories of the past found their place in a world that, while cold and harsh, was filled with meaning and purpose. Conclusion. As the embers of the fire flicker and the songs fade into the night, you step back from the hearth, feeling the weight of the tales that have been told. The Viking world, so stark in its brutality and beauty, lives on through these stories. Through the legacy of those who dared to face the cold and carve out their place in history. Whether as peasants struggling to survive or chieftains wielding power, the rhythms of life in the Viking North were shaped by the need for strength, community, and the eternal search for meaning. The cold winds may blow outside, but within the halls of the Viking elite, the fire of the past continues to burn brightly, forever echoing through the stories told by the hearth. And as you drift into the warmth, you are reminded that, much like the Vikings themselves, our stories, though they fade with time, are what give our lives meaning.